It is now my pleasure and honor to introduce somebody who has been a mentor for me for, honestly, probably 5 years at this point, 5 or 6. However many panicked emails or Facebook messages or texts I send saying, help. Our keynote speaker has always been there to give me an answer, and it is my absolute pleasure to now introduce Dr. Holly Jordan. She currently serves as the Director of Business Development for UNERA, the oldest U.S.-based NGO supporting Palestinians. UNERA works in Palestine, Lebanon, and Jordan, supporting locally led sustainable development projects and providing humanitarian assistance during times of crisis. Dr. Jordan graduated from Virginia Tech with a PhD in political and cultural theory and previously served as visiting assistant professor of religion and politics at Converse College. Her Model Arab League career began in 2004 at Converse College, and she has served as, hold on for the laundry list, delegate, chair, justice, advocate, secretary general, academic judge, faculty advisor for 2 teams, and now, finally, the crowning jewel, New Mall's Summit speaker. Also, she wrote the book, the Model Arab League Manual, co-authored with Dr. Phil Degatti, and it's the sole textbook for the International Model Arab League program. So please join me in welcoming my friend, Dr. Holly Jordan.
Hey everyone, let's just start off with a thank you for Katie, because the council members, which I've been through quite a few at this point, are really the unsung heroes of this conference. The amount of emails that they get from your faculty advisors, the amount of work that they do putting together the background guides with the chairs. I could go on and on, but this program would not exist without their hard work. Okay, so I know you guys probably played this game at plenary, but for how many of you is this your first year in Model Arab League? Awesome! Oh, that makes me so happy. For me, this is my 18th year in the program. I think there are only 2 years where I wasn't at New Mall in the middle of that for some reason, mostly because poor graduate student that couldn't afford the gas that year. But this has been a part of my life annually since 2004. It's my honor to speak with you all today because, frankly, in the words of the screenwriter Kevin Smith, I'm not even supposed to be here today for a couple reasons. One, I just got back from 25 days of work travel with UNERA. As you might imagine, traveling between countries in a COVID environment is a challenge on top of the issues of borders and security and crossing them that you deal with is the cost of doing business. I had to tell Katie on Friday that I was making it, so I really almost wasn't here. As Katie said, I currently serve at an international NGO called UNERA, formerly American Near East Refugee Aid. We were founded in 1968 in response to the humanitarian crisis following the 1967 war, and we've been providing sustainable development and emergency humanitarian aid to Palestinians, as well as other refugee and host communities in Palestine, Lebanon, and Jordan. Our work supports infrastructure projects, brings medical donations to a region with a crippled healthcare system, builds kindergartens and provides teacher training, creates livelihood opportunities for youth through technical and vocational training. We empower women to start their own businesses and provide business startup grants and technical training to ensure that they succeed. We help the most vulnerable regardless of citizenship, religion, or gender in the countries in which we serve. In my 25-day jaunt across countries, I lost track of how many PCR tests I've taken. I country hopped from Egypt to Jordan to Lebanon, back to Jordan, into Palestine, into Israel, just to make it to you guys today. I visited our work projects, met with local leaders and community organizers to hear from them what their needs are. I am lucky to serve in an organization in which all of the country staff that we have are not just from the countries they serve, but the communities they serve. There's not one American on staff in our field offices, which is really a testament to our mission. So very few organizations like us can say that they don't have a large expat staff. And I'm just here in DC trying to get them the money to make sure that the projects can continue. I met with men and women pursuing their dreams to become mechanics and nurses and to one day have a better life than their parents. I saw beautiful seascapes in some of the most horrific living conditions in which I have ever had the sadness of encountering. I had not met with my colleagues since August of 2019 in the field. I was scheduled to go over in April of 2020, and well, we all know how that went. I sat in their living rooms and heard about the 11-day siege in May 2021 of Gaza and the terrors their family felt during that time. I also stood in awe of these colleagues that went right back to work 2 days after the ceasefire to provide comfort and aid to their fellow citizens. And this entire trip, like I said earlier, only happened because of an accident that happened 18 years ago. And for those of you who were at Sturmel in 2019, some of this is going to be a repeat, and for that I do apologize. First of all, where's Converse? Hey ladies and gents. It's weird saying gents, but I'm glad you guys are here too. I don't know how it works at y'all's schools, but at Converse we have once-a-year tryouts for the Model League team. And pretty much, if you don't make it freshman year, you don't make it. I don't know if y'all realize this, but Arab League's kind of a big deal at Converse. People come to Converse to make it onto this team, and it's vicious, these tryouts. I had no idea that this was the case when I started as a freshman. All I know is that we got an email inviting us to tryouts for some sort of debate team, and I figured, why not? So I signed up. That Sunday night at tryouts, I quickly learned that the Model Arab League program was far more than a debate team. I competed against and debated with some of the finest women I now know, and I had fun, but I didn't make the team. From what I've been told, I apparently did quite well in debate, but blew one important question as part of the exit interview process for the tryout. I was asked the question, what can you bring to the team? Instead, I got nervous and talked about what Model Arab League could do for me, leadership and travel opportunities and all of that stuff. It wasn't what they wanted to hear. And it took me years to realize what they were asking me is, what is your value add? What is your hidden talent that you bring to make this team stronger and this program better? So I thank Casey and Aaron, my head delegates at the time, for pushing me on that question because I come back to it often. Today I want to kind of talk about what my value add has been to the program and what you can do moving on in your life from this weekend that you've just completed. 18 years ago, nearly to the day, I found myself in an auditorium just like this, sitting through a plenary session, having no idea that that weekend would change my life. Where are my econ delegates? Yeah, that was my first committee as a biochem major. We had a last-minute slot on the team, and given I had done well enough in the tryout, regardless of bombing the question, Dr. Dunn, who is in double in this room, and if you guys want to know about that, we can talk about that later. Dr. Dunn invited me to the team. Of course, he pranked me as part of it. We were representing Jordan and Libya that year. So he put Holly Jordan, the delegate from Jordan, on that team so that I'd have to introduce myself that way. And he put Libby Long, the delegate from Libya, on the Libya team and would not let us change spots. So thanks for that, Dr. Dunn. Really appreciated that. But in spite of my nerves, I tried hard. I talked a lot. I probably was completely off Jordanian policy most of the time. I'd had 2 weeks to prepare. But I made a lifelong friend in my chair, Dave Valenti, who mentored me through that process, as so many of your wonderful chairs have probably mentored you through parliamentary procedure and how to pass notes effectively during the course of the weekend. So let's give a round of applause for the chairs this week. I was told at Sturmel that I would not be coming to Newmall, that the team was already selected and there wasn't a spot for me. But then the magic slot opened up. Again, I wasn't supposed to be there that weekend. I found out with about a week's notice that I was going. My big sis, Josie Fingerhut, who went on from this program and now serves as a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army, was the assistant sec-gen that year and brought me on as her chief of staff. Upon arrival, I was informed that the school representing Eritrea had pulled out last minute, and that for the first time in Model Arab League history, Eritrea had topics that were vital in not one, but 2 committees, and had an Arab Court of Justice case. I was the one person at Nationals with nothing to do that weekend, so they had me represent Eritrea in all 3 committees, as we limited debate to each topic. Where's Northeastern at? Hey, y'all. You all saved me that weekend. I was introduced to then student Dr. Diagati, who was the faculty advisor for Northeastern for 12 years and was also an alum of the program. He's remained a close friend and is the co-author of the Model Arab League Manual. First thing I ever said to him upon being told I was gonna be Eritrea was, "What's Eritrea?" His response was, "The question you meant to ask is, where's Eritrea? And we have a lot of work to do." Luckily, Northeastern had represented Eritrea the year before, and because of the wonderful colleagues that we all make in this program across our school boundaries, they handed me a binder of research. They handed me information on my court case, and then they threw me in the deep end of the pool with cement galoshes. I debated better than I had at CERML. I still came nowhere close to winning an award, but where are my court justices? Enjoy being the black sheep of the conference. We all know that the ACJ gets put in a closet, but the ACJ changed my life and was my committee for years to come. For me, it really is the best committee here in terms of truly putting into practice what it is we're attempting to learn during the course of this process. On the court, I didn't lose my case so much as it was thrown out due to lack of evidence, but given I had 24 hours to research and present, I still feel pretty okay about that. I then, within those early weeks, got offered a third opportunity to study with the National Council on one of their study travel trips. I studied in Jordan. I learned Arabic and Levantine politics at Al Albayt University in rural Mafraq in 2004, 15 miles from the Syrian border and awful close to Iraq as well. My parents were terrified at the time, but with their support, I made it on that trip. Many people are going to say to you this weekend, it's one thing to study here, but you have to go to the region. And they are absolutely correct. It's one thing to stand in a room and debate about people you've never met or from cultures you may not be a part of. But it's another thing to be invited into people's homes, to discuss these policies that affect their everyday lives, and to realize that we're all the same at the end of the day. Sophomore year, I came back to Converse and joined the Arab Court of Justice full-time. I ended up serving as both Assistant Chief Justice and Chief Justice then at Nationals, with Mark Morozink, who's been walking around taking photos. He's back here. Mark and I were ACJ Chief Justice and Assistant Chief Justice together, and it's been my honor to work alongside him with the program ever since. I spent the summer talking with some of the smartest people I've ever known, coming up with new cases for the following year, and doing research to write the background guides for the committee. This was the first sense of what graduate school research would be like for me, and it instilled in me something that I knew I was going to want to be doing for the rest of my life. Senior year, I chaired a lot. I finally won an award for the first time, chairing for the court, which had never happened before. I then enrolled at UGA and did a master's in biblical Judaism. In 2011, I matriculated into a political theory program at Virginia Tech, and I was determined to start a team. I put a full delegation together in the spring in 2 weeks, half of which then pulled out the night before CERML, which often happens due to the fact that it's during spring break. So we ended up having students in 3 committees, myself included, because we needed a debater. We still managed to earn some delegate awards, and because of all of these accomplishments, the council graciously, and I am forever thankful, awarded me the Lifetime Achievement Award at 27. So I think I've peaked, possibly. It felt unearned at the time. You know, I was still in school, I didn't have a full-time teaching gig, and it didn't feel like I'd actually done anything. Because it's the funny part about achievement. You can throw yourself fully into something that you're passionate about, and you can be really good at it. And 2 things can happen. One, you start to think of what you're doing as in all that special or exceptional because it's just what you do. You go to practice on whatever day, you do your research, you're surrounded by people doing the same thing, and you don't zoom out to realize that this process is something unlike any other in terms of the learning value, in terms of the work that you put in. And of course, for many of us, that imposter syndrome kicks in, that I'm not as good as people are telling me I am. I don't know politics like some of the other people on my team. And in both cases, I'm here to tell you that you're wrong, that you've earned your spot here, and that you've done incredible work this weekend. The following year, my students at Tech and I founded and hosted the first ever Appalachia Regional Model Arab League, hosted at Tech that year. My grandmother's family is from Appalachia. My grandmother got married at 14. My father was a high school dropout. So for me, it was really important to bring Model Arab League to my home, to try to bring students the opportunities that I would not have had without this program. I got to stand beside faculty advisors who had shaped my young life, Dr. Dunn and Dr. Naeem. Dr. Naeem, are you here? No, Georgia State, where are you at? Please tell him hi for me. He's my favorite. Don't tell Joe Dunn. And they treated me as a peer, not as a former student. I really hope they know how much their support has meant to me my entire life. Arnold is still going strong. Where's Holland's at? Thank you for taking that on and creating one of the strongest conferences that we have in the program. And thank you for carrying on my dream to bring this to my home. In the midst of trying to finish my PhD and run the program at Virginia Tech, a publisher reached out to Phil Diagati and myself, asking if we'd be interested in writing the textbook for the program. Together, along with the research support from many of our former students, we put the book together. For those of you considering graduate school, I do not recommend writing a book when you're supposed to be writing your dissertation. Your advisor doesn't look highly upon it, you get a little bit behind. But if somebody reaches out and said, "Do you want to publish a book?" you say, "Yes." So that got me a year behind, but for me that was worth it. I then moved on to teach full-time at Roanoke College, and I brought Model Arab League to that school as well. We competed at Armel and Sermal our first year and placed at both, and I'm really proud to say that Roanoke College still attends to Armel to this day. As I thought back over my Model Arab League life to come up with what I wanted to say with you all today, I realized something. I'm still terrible at answering the question, what can you bring to Model League? Because for me, Model League has given me my life's work. On a second council study travel to Lebanon in 2012 when I was a graduate student, I happened to meet Bill Corcoran, who at the time was the president and CEO at Anera. In 2018, I found myself on the job market post-academia and wondered what Anera was up to. I found a job listing on their website that felt like reading my own CV back to me, all because of a random meeting on a study travel visit for the National Council that I wouldn't have been on if I hadn't failed my original tryout at Converse College 18 years ago. At Anera, I get to do what you all did this weekend every single day. I work with an amazing team of researchers and program designers to win new grants and to design new programs that have direct positive impact on the lives of the people in the region that we serve. I work with the staff who are Lebanese, Jordanian, Palestinian, Syrian, and we all work together to bring opportunity and stability to the countries that y'all represented. Unless you think we don't still sit around and come up with acronyms and then try to backfill them to make our fun conferences or councils or summits work, we have a USAID program that we have called CARMA, which stands for Critical Access for Refugees to Medicine and Health Services. It also means dignity in Arabic, so it's double duty there as well. Plus, this is exactly what Anera does in its projects, puts the dignity of beneficiaries first. So yeah, the acronym game still happens in real life as well. As I look over the agendas for social and econ and Palestinian especially, these topics are absolutely in line with what we do in international development. The topics you debated this weekend, regardless of your community, are actually relevant to what is being conducted in those countries. So now that you all have suffered through my extensive life story, let me get to what I actually want to say to you all. This program matters. Having turned 36 last year, I quite literally dedicated half of my life to it. If you let it, Model Arab League will teach you how to think, how to strategize, how to come up with solutions to the world's biggest problems, and it's so important today, how to find common ground with those with whom you may strongly disagree. Your thoughts matter. At least one of the resolutions you pass this week will have an idea worthy of ending up in a league proposal. And if you don't believe me on that, we send the summit packet to the league every single year. And we have found some of our language in subsequent league resolutions that have been published through summits of the actual league. Your insights have helped inform the policy of the actual League of Arab States. I started today by remarking that I was never supposed to end up here. It's taken me a long time to realize how wrong feeling that way is. I'm here because of the life experiences that got me to Converse in the first place. I've taken the skills I've learned in this program, and I deploy them every single day of my life. Y'all are here for so many different reasons. Some of you are here for a grade. Some of you are here because your friends guilted you into it. Some of you are here because it's all you've ever wanted to do. But regardless of your motivations, I want you to be open to the possibility that you're exactly where you're supposed to be today. That by sitting in this room, you might be putting yourself on a path that changes the rest of your life. I changed my major from biochemistry because this program introduced me to a world I could not leave. And I want you to embrace that possibility. Find your lifelong friends in this room and lean on the faculty advisors who will mentor you through your life journey. Learn something about the countries you represent and then go visit them. Go study their cultures, go learn their languages, go listen to their ideas and bring them back and share them with the United States. And for God's sake, do not assume you need to be a political science major to be here. One of my best friends and one of the strongest Model League debaters and chairs I've ever known was a music major that graduated from Converse. She worked at the National Council for a while and earned a Fulbright scholarship to Jordan to teach English for a year. Her year in Jordan turned into nearly 8, during which she studied with and performed in the Amman National Orchestra. Her impact on the region is seen through the accomplishments of all the young men and women she taught and with musicians with whom she performed. So please, find your unique gift that you bring to this program, because this program means nothing without your participation and your dedication. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today. I will now yield to questions. This could be questions about Arab League, what I do for a living, how to get into grad school, where the good food nearby is. Like, floor's open, y'all.
Who has a question next, so I know where to go?
I was just wondering, like, you brought up throughout the whole speech, which was really good, by the way. You brought up the question of what can you bring to the table, and I know you mentioned it towards the latter part, that you kind of still struggled with the question. Did you ever find what you brought to Model Arab? Did you ever answer that question?
For me, and Joe, you can probably disagree with this, I push things on the team. The Arab Court of Justice has always been something that's been a very tricky committee. So I worked my butt off to make sure that it remained a part of this program. Because for me, learning how to argue something that you may not disagree with, you may not agree with, is a challenge. And I brought that mentoring ability to subsequent Arab Court of Justice chairs. For me, the parliamentary procedure has always been the most fun part of the game. So my value add at the time was that mentorship of the chairs that came behind me. I was a terrible debater. I got too much in my own head about it. I would speak ahead of myself and realize I wasn't being diplomatic. My value add was my ability to organize a room and provide a space where delegates could learn how to debate, but also could, quickly make up for any mistakes they might make in a safe environment. Chairing isn't just about getting the rules right, it's about making sure debate can happen. And that's why chair's discretion comes in so important. Being able to read your room and understand what the needs are, regardless of whether something requires a 2/3 majority. Reminding the room at that critical moment, you can use a motion to change how many voting members it takes to pass something. A motion to suspend the rules to require a half majority as opposed to 2/3. Like using the rules to get where you need to go. For me, I think that was my ability to mentor not only the students in my team, but to make close connections with other teams and to then be able to be a faculty advisor. And that came from the examples of the women with whom I debated, from Joe, and from other faculty advisors in the room. Their example let me find that strength. And I think that comes from my history as a Navy brat. I went to 8 schools, kindergarten through 12th grade, and I had to learn to read a room really quickly and figure out where I fit into friend structures that had been in place since kindergarten, being the nerdy kid that liked Star Trek in a time where being a nerd was not fun or popular. So my abilities to jump into a space and figure out what the need is and get the team there, that was what I brought to the team, I think. That's a good question. Thank you. Who's next?
Okay, so I know that you mentioned.
Thank you.
I know that you mentioned that you started off as a biochem major, and then you decided to change it because of model aero. And so, well, how was that process like for you?
I was getting a C- in zoology, so that really helped a lot. But my dream when I started at Converse was to be a biochem major with a philosophy minor. I wanted to do biomedical ethics because I wanted to know how our medical system affects people's ability to get care. My father worked in nonprofit, helping the working poor in a time before the Affordable Care Act get annual visits and chronic medications. So I've ended up back in that space, interestingly enough. Our largest program in Anera is our medical donations program. It's what we founded on. We brought over $100 million worth of medications value to the region last year alone. So I'm still living out the dreams I had as a biochem major while fully admitting that I was not actually good enough at math or memorizing the parts of the cell to ever pursue that career. But I was also floundering at that time. What was I going to do? We didn't have a major in philosophy, only a minor. I was going to have to pick something else. And the invitation to join the team came absolutely at the right time in my life. I took intro to international affairs during Jan term, and it became a second tryout for Arab League. Anytime somebody had a question in class from the day before, instead of answering it, Dr. Dunn pointed at me and made me answer it. My peers hated me for being a show-off, and it's all that man's fault for doing it. But it showed him that, whatever I may have been lacking in the tryout, I had those skills. So that's how I got out. It's not me encouraging anybody to switch sides and becoming a poli-sci major. I want you to be open to the fact that, there are other ways to hit your dreams, and sometimes it's okay to give up a major if it means finding where your actual niche and where your actual soul is. Yes, sir.
Hey there, thanks for coming to talk to us. Throughout your speech, you talked about how Model Arab has kind of evolved and spread to more schools, and how you had a hand in doing that. But where do you see Model Arab going to, and what do you hope for it in the future?
That's a great question. I would love if the opportunities to study and travel became more possible for everybody. One of the things I have not been able to do with the council that I would like to be able to do more is give talks like this in spaces where we can fundraise. For me, the limiting factor for really jumping into this was finances. My parents, were lower middle class at best. They were the council subsidizing that trip. That whole trip was $3,500, including airfare, dorm, tuition, 2 meals a day, and travel through the entirety of Jordan. It's an unbeatable price. Helping to find more access for students for whom finances are the only reason they can't do that would be my next step for the council, for them to continue embracing the fact that we want to do U.S. Arab Relations. We want to go, learn, come back, and share. I would like to see the council evolve in that way. In terms of the Arab League program, I would urge you all to go out and be advocates for it. You have friends at so many other colleges that you can tell about this program. If you had an experience here that was meaningful to you, tell your peers why. Get more schools involved. For the regional conferences, unfortunately sometimes they're not full, but friends from your high schools that went to schools nearby. Challenge them to find ways to introduce this program at their schools. Give more students the opportunity to really learn about the region in a way that's unique from all other programs. Those 2 directions is where I'd like to see more schools, more study abroad opportunities.
You mentioned, that was
very loud, but you mentioned that there's no American staff on on-site locations in ANERA. How do you navigate being an American, very interested in this region, while knowing your place and knowing how not to impede too much?
Great question. Decolonization of aid is a very strong conversation we're having in development world right now. Too many organizations are based out of DC and have this top-down approach of the funders want this, make it work, rather than going to their staff that's local and saying, what is the critical need right now, and how do we find funding for it? I live every day hoping to work myself out of a job. That's the goal. I studied Palestine because I was passionate about it. I am a Jewish American who believes that there are challenges with the current state of Israel that are leading to human rights violations. For me, this is a mission not only in terms of my studies, but also in terms of my identity. So remembering that I am coming from a position of trying to want to do good in the region, but knowing that eventually I'm not going to be doing this is what keeps me on the right track. And also trust. I trust my team implicitly in the field. They are brilliant engineers and nurses and teachers who have studied and who are just as passionate about their communities as I am. I felt drawn to this region ever since I asked that question of what's Eritrea. Didn't know where it was on a map. Really didn't. Didn't know it had split from Ethiopia. Didn't know it was in the Horn. That was my ignorance. And that first little foray made me want to do good. But as I've gone through this career, it's abundantly clear that the goal of this is to empower local communities to solve their own challenges. If I can provide the funding to start that, great. But I'll move on to another organization. I'll bring these talents to write grants to somebody else. I'll get them to that point, and hopefully, as us millennials have our 12 careers during the course of our career, I'll get to do it a few more times in my life. Thanks for that question.
Hi, so I have a deep question and a fun question. Which would you rather have?
Which do you want the punchline to be?
Surprise me.
Let's do the fun one.
Okay. So before we started our day, our chair gave us 2 questions, and it was, if you could see the future, would you see the future and why? And then 2, what is the secret of the universe you always wanted to know?
Let's start with the secret of the universe that I've always wanted to know. Wow, this is hard. Man, God, you got me. If you don't mind sharing, what was yours?
Me, I want to see how communication really was prevalent. So how does us talking now could possibly cure somebody's depression overseas? How every interconnected web, every moment we have, every time we connect, we are, even if we're not around them, affecting the lives of the people around them. How does God or gods or ideas and beliefs tie into the things that create the future, create our ideas, and how do we mesh so much?
Love it. That's amazing. For me, I got my degree in biblical Judaism because I love origin stories. I like to know how we got to the point that we have these ideas in the Abrahamic faith and why we believe them in the ways that we do now. What was the culture at the time that influenced why we don't eat pork as Jews or Muslims? Why did that, because God said so is not a great answer, right? But that's often what we get. For me, it's the why of how we've gotten to this moment that always pushes me. And could you please repeat the first question?
The other fun question was, if you could see the future, would you?
Yeah, I would see it. I said earlier that Star Trek's my favorite damn TV show. It's the show that talks about a place where we've gotten post-money, post-conflict, and discovering the future. I loved space growing up and watched Apollo 13 way too many times because of this moment, where technology failed and all these people came together to succeed. I think, the space race was this inspiration for decades to seek beyond ourselves And I want to see where that goes. Our space program has not been as robust in the last couple decades, and some of the strongest advancements we had in our technology and our culture came from that looking beyond ourselves. And so why I want us to remain deeply grounded in the experiences in the world that we're in, keeping that hope that we can move towards something where we don't have World War III breaking out because we didn't learn from it the last 2 times. I would like to have hope that we will get to that point where we don't have to worry about World War IV. That's the future I would hope to see, and I would definitely look for it, absolutely. I'm not that nihilist in my beliefs at this point anymore, thank goodness. Katie, I don't know how much time I have, but I don't mind taking as many questions as you're willing to give me.
I think we've got 1, maybe 2 more, yeah? 2? Oh, 1 up.
Thank you for that speech. And I just wanted to ask a question. Alright, so first of all, I wanted to say that my first experience in Model Arab League was back in Rabat, Morocco. And that's when I first met Dr. Naeem and a lot of people from different universities in the world. It was Georgia State, Wilmington University, and the American University of Abu Dhabi and everything. So now here I am doing Model Arab League in DC from Morocco, and I just wanted to ask you a question about like the opportunities of doing Model Arab League in other countries, especially the Arab world, and how that would help American students like explore the Arab world in depth, more in depth, and be in an Arabic-speaking country and do Model Arab League in an Arabic-speaking country. Thank you.
I always wanted to do one of the conferences in the region. Two of my peers got to travel to Jordan in 2004, 2005, I can't remember which, to help a high school start a Model Arab League program. I think this program goes both ways. I learned so much from my Arab peers that attended U.S. universities on the nuances of the politics. I feel like for American students to go to the region gives them even more knowledge, but I think Arab students learn about Arabs from other Arab countries. I mean, let's be honest, if you speak the local dialect in Morocco and you try to speak Eastern Levantine local dialect, there's a lot of miscommunication. You end up switching to modern standard anyways, right? Like, the opportunity for Arabs to have a deeper understanding of their own region, I think, is just as valuable. I think that the life skills you learn through this program of listening, of critical thinking, of how to communicate with others are universal. Education often in the Arab world is about rote memorization rather than synthesis thinking. And this is something we encounter at work, is enabling teachers in the region to explore new pedagogies. And I feel like we also, too, get that exchange from our Arab students to our US-based students, our non-Arab students, different ways of learning. I would love to see an Arab League conference in every Arab state. I'd love to see an Arab League conference in every region of the world, or a NATO conference. I was heavily involved with Model NATO as well, and the consensus-based debating in NATO improved my Arab League debate. Something can pass 3 in favor, 2 opposed, and the rest abstaining, and it's only binding to 3 countries in Arab League. To pass something in NATO, everybody has to be on board or it fails. Learning how to learn from each other is the value of bringing this program to the Arab world, and the value of expanding it here and across the globe. And I hope we do more of it, and I'd love to be a part of it.
1, 2 more.
Hi, thank you so much for speaking to us. You mentioned specifically that not being a politics major shouldn't be a barrier to joining the team or to participating at all. And I thank you so much for saying that. I think that's 100% true. But all of us here kind of know it. How would you incentivize teams to communicate that to students who haven't tried out, to encourage students to try out for the team that wouldn't have thought of it otherwise?
I would say think about the strengths of certain programs. Some of the strongest people in debate are the theater majors, because they're used to entering a role and digging deep and finding their motivation and memorizing lines, and they can come into a room and be a powerhouse because they have that ability to project and that ability to play that role. Reach out to the econ majors and say, there's an econ committee if you're interested in learning more about Arab banking or, the regional, economics of gas and oil. There's an opportunity to expand your knowledge. Find the parts of the program where their value add would be and use that as your pitch. And then tell them that they get to go to DC. That's a big motivating factor. It's really how I got a lot of students over the years to do it. But once they made it into that room, the first day, most of them were hooked. I had repeat champions every year. Most of my team came from the previous year. Y'all's passion does far more to bring in students than the website ever will. So I would say find that value add and encourage people to pursue it.
Hi, thank you so much for talking with us today. I had 2 questions. One is serious, is what is the biggest life lesson you have learned during your time with Model Air Fleet? And the second one you brought up, the 2 Dr. Duns. Why do you have them?
All right, 2 Dr. Duns is definitely coming out. But first, the best life lesson I learned is that you can learn from anybody. It's not just your faculty advisors. It's not just your peers on the team. I learned so much about how to do this from faculty advisors that weren't even my own, from the people in the room with whom I was not supposed to agree. Active listening is the biggest skill that I gained from this program. Being able to actively listen and change my policy if I was a little off in the room. Being willing to admit that I came in prepared, but that doesn't mean that I knew everything. Being humble enough to realize that you can't do this by yourself, that, you need to make that network of close friends. I mean, half of the people on my favorites list in my phone are from this program. My ex-husband I met through this program. Lifelong friendships and relationships have come from this. I got my first job in DC through a Kennesaw student that I had a connection with, where I learned how to write grants so I could get the job at Anera when I did my hard career reset. None of that would have come if I wasn't actively listening and learning from the people in the rooms I was with. Now as to Flat Joe. Well, Joe Dunn refused to come to my wedding. He wrote me a lovely card that I still have in my desk to this day and that I read on bad days to pump myself up. But that was unacceptable to me. So I went to one of the connies that was on the newspaper and said, hey, Joe Dunn's ego is a mile wide. Tell him you're going to do a deep interview with him for the student newspaper. Get the high quality camera and take a full body shot, please. So he's in civvies because it was at our barbecue that we have at the end of the year every year. And I took that photo and spent the best $100 I've ever spent in my life to get that printed out for my wedding. He caught the bouquet. He danced the hora. He was in the Converse picture of all the connies who came. He has brought so much joy showing up in a way where he can't backtalk us that I can't even begin to describe it. Because at the end of the day, Joe Dunn's my second father. He got me through so many important moments in my life. He found me scholarship money to go to Jordan when my parents couldn't quite make it. And yeah, he's fun to put in my guest room now behind the door and scare the crap out of people when they shut the door. So I've taken him on the metro, I've taken him on the bus to get him here. Luckily I got to drive today, but that's the legacy of Flat Joe. He'll outlast Joe by a couple years probably. And he'll be a part of y'all's delegation photos at Converse for as long as you want him. We got some good pictures with JDA, who unfortunately wasn't able to be here, Dr. Anthony, the founder of the program. So there's the hashtag Flat Joe and Joe at Newmall that we've been using for years as well. So if you guys want to pose, have fun with that. Is that the last one, Mrs. Katie? Great. Thank you for pushing me with these questions. Seriously, I've thought about the program in ways I never had before, and it's going to inform how I continue to serve in this program. So thank you for your lovely questions. I'm sticking around after this if anybody wants to talk to me. My contact info is on my LinkedIn, so if you guys think of questions afterwards, please don't hesitate to reach out. The best part of being a part of this program still for me is the mentoring aspect, to be the resource for you all that so many of my faculty advisors were for me. So again, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to coming back.